There's a $6 jar sitting on your grocery store shelf right now. It kills antibiotic-resistant bacteria. It stops wound infections that modern medicine is struggling to control. It has a shelf life of over 3,000 years. Archaeologists found seal jars inside Egyptian tombs, and the honey inside was still completely sterile, still usable. Field surgeons used it in World War II when antibiotics ran out. The World Health Organization officially recognizes it as an antimicrobial agent, and the $1.2 trillion pharmaceutical industry has spent the last 80 years making absolutely sure you think of it as nothing more than a breakfast condiment. Not because it failed, because it worked far too well. A solution that costs $6, never expires, and kills bacteria that $300 prescription drugs cannot touch, cannot be sold back to you at a profit margin that keeps shareholders happy. This is the story of raw honey, the oldest antimicrobial substance ever documented, and the industry that buried it. Welcome to the Blueprint Secrets. This is where we crack open the vaults they sealed shut. Now, let me take you back to where this story actually begins. Egypt, 2400 BC. A battlefield surgeon is treating a soldier with a deep infected wound. No surgery, no antiseptic chemicals, no prescription. He packs the wound with raw honey and wraps it in linen. The infection stops. The wound closes clean. This is not legend. This is documented in the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest surviving medical texts ever discovered. Written around 1550 BC, but referencing practices already centuries old at the time of writing. Egyptian physicians listed honey as a treatment in over 900 documented remedies. 900 remedies from a single ingredient. This was not coincidence. This was observation accumulated across generations of medical practice. Now here is what makes this story even stranger. The Greeks knew. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, used honey to treat open wounds and skin ulcers around 400 BC. He wrote about it directly. His medical oath is still recited by every doctor graduating today. His honey treatments are nowhere in any modern medical curriculum. The Romans knew. Their military surgeons carried honey into every campaign across Europe and North Africa. Roman legions conquered the known world and kept their soldiers alive with honey-packed wound dressings as standard field protocol. Ayurvedic medicine in India documented honey as a core antimicrobial treatment for over 4,000 years. Unbroken tradition, continuous recorded use. Every major civilization on every continent that ever faced infected wounds arrived at the same answer independently. And then in 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. Within 20 years, synthetic antibiotics were flooding every hospital and every pharmacy on Earth. And within a single generation, 4,000 years of documented antimicrobial knowledge was reclassified as folk medicine, primitive, unreliable, unscientific. But stay with me now, because what modern science discovered when it finally studied raw honey seriously is the part that should genuinely make you angry. Now let me show you exactly what is inside that $6 jar, because this is where the science gets uncomfortable for a very large industry. Raw honey kills bacteria through 4 completely separate mechanisms simultaneously. First, hydrogen peroxide. When honey contacts moisture, an enzyme called glucose oxidase activates and begins producing hydrogen peroxide continuously, not in dangerous concentrations, in a slow, sustained release that creates a permanent antimicrobial environment at the wound surface. Every hospital in the world uses hydrogen peroxide as a disinfectant. Honey produces it naturally on contact for as long as it is present. Second, osmotic dehydration. Honey contains roughly 80% sugar by weight. That concentration is so high that bacteria cannot survive in it. Water is pulled out of bacterial cells through osmosis faster than the cells can replace it. The bacteria dehydrate and die, not weakened, dead. Third, pH. Raw honey has a pH between 3.2 and 4.5. Most bacteria cannot survive in an environment that is acidic. The honey creates a surface chemistry that is simply incompatible with bacterial life. Fourth, methylglyoxal. This is the compound that changes everything. Methylglyoxal, found in particularly high concentrations in Manuka honey, directly damages bacterial DNA. It disrupts the replication process that allows bacteria to multiply and spread. No antibiotic resistance is possible against this mechanism, because resistance requires the bacteria to survive long enough to adapt. Methylglyoxal does not give them that window. 4 independent killing mechanisms, hitting bacteria from 4 different directions at once. Now here is the number that the pharmaceutical industry does not want printed on a label anywhere. A 2011 study published in the journal Microbiology tested raw honey against MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, the bacteria that kills over 11,000 Americans every single year. Specifically, because it resists every antibiotic thrown at it, raw honey killed it. Not slowed it, not weakened it. Killed it completely in controlled laboratory conditions. A 2016 study from the University of Southampton confirmed that Manuka honey prevented MRSA biofilm formation entirely. Biofilm is the protective coating bacteria build around themselves to resist antibiotics. It is the primary reason MRSA is so lethal. Honey stopped the biofilm from forming in the first place. The WHO has acknowledged honey's antimicrobial properties in official publications. The National Institutes of Health has funded multiple studies confirming the results. The evidence is not fringe. It is peer-reviewed, independently replicated, and sitting in the same scientific databases that pharmaceutical researchers use every single day. And yet, walk into any hospital right now and ask the staff about honey as a wound treatment. See what answer you get. Now stay with me, because this next part is where the story takes its darkest turn. The global pharmaceutical market generates over $1.2 trillion per year. Antibiotics alone account for over $40 billion annually. That figure depends entirely on one foundational belief in the consumer mind: that fighting infection requires manufactured chemistry, that nature does not have the answer, that you need a prescription, a pharmacy, and a product that runs out and needs replacing. You cannot patent raw honey. It has existed for 150 million years. The bees perfected the formula long before any chemistry laboratory existed. You cannot trademark methylglyoxal. You cannot create a proprietary version of glucose oxidase. You cannot build a subscription model around something a beekeeper produces and a grocery store sells for $6. So the industry did not suppress the research directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they simply stopped funding it. Academic research follows money. When pharmaceutical companies fund antibiotic research and nobody funds honey research, the curriculum fills with antibiotics and honey disappears from medical education within 2 generations. No conspiracy required. Just economics applied quietly and consistently for 80 years. By 1970, the physician who would have learned honey wound treatment as basic medical knowledge in 1930 was now being trained entirely within a framework built around synthetic antibiotics. The knowledge was not banned. It was simply never mentioned. And what is never mentioned in medical school does not exist in clinical practice. Meanwhile, antibiotic resistance has become one of the most serious medical crises of the 21st century. The WHO estimates that antibiotic-resistant infections could kill 10 million people per year by 2050. MRSA already kills more Americans annually than HIV. The bacteria are winning against synthetic antibiotics because synthetic antibiotics work through single mechanisms that bacteria can evolve around. Raw honey works through 4 mechanisms simultaneously. Bacteria cannot evolve resistance to all 4 at once. The science on this is settled. The clinical implications are enormous, and the solution costs $6 at the grocery store. I need to be completely honest with you about what this means practically. Raw honey is not a replacement for emergency medical care. Serious infections, deep tissue injuries, systemic illness, these require a doctor. I'm not suggesting otherwise. What the evidence shows clearly is that for surface wound care, minor cuts, abrasions, burns, and skin infections, raw honey performs at a level that commercial antiseptic products do not match. That is where the practical application lives. And that is the knowledge that never made it onto the first aid aisle. Here is exactly what to do with this right now. First, the honey you buy matters enormously. Processed commercial honey sold in bear-shaped bottles has been heated, filtered, and treated in ways that destroy the enzyme activity responsible for hydrogen peroxide production. It will not work the same way. You need raw honey, unfiltered, unpasteurized, ideally from a local beekeeper or clearly labeled raw at a health food store. Manuka honey from New Zealand carries the highest methylglyoxal concentration of any tested variety and has the most robust clinical evidence behind it. It costs more. For serious wound care, it is worth the difference. Second, for minor cuts and abrasions, clean the wound with clean water first. Apply a thin layer of raw honey directly to the wound surface. Cover with a clean bandage. Change the dressing every 12 to 24 hours, cleaning and reapplying honey each time. The wound environment created by the honey is hostile to bacterial colonization from the first application. Third, for burns, raw honey applied immediately after cooling the burn under running water reduces pain, prevents infection, and has been shown in clinical studies to produce faster healing and less scarring than silver sulfadiazine cream, the standard pharmaceutical burn treatment. A 2015 meta-analysis published in the journal Burns reviewed 15 randomized controlled trials comparing honey to conventional burn dressings. Honey outperformed conventional treatment on healing time in the majority of trials reviewed. Fourth, store your raw honey at room temperature, away from direct sunlight. Never refrigerate it. Cold temperatures cause crystallization that does not affect potency, but makes application difficult. If your honey crystallizes, place the jar in warm water until it returns to liquid. Never microwave it. Heat above 40 degrees Celsius begins destroying the enzyme activity that produces hydrogen peroxide. A retired nurse in Scotland began using raw Manuka honey on her own chronic leg ulcer. After 2 years of conventional treatment, failed to produce complete healing. Within 6 weeks of daily honey dressing changes, the ulcer had closed completely. She documented the process with photographs and submitted the case to her former hospital. The dermatology department reviewed it and acknowledged the result, then filed it away and continued prescribing the same conventional treatments to every subsequent patient with the same condition. Think about what we have actually covered here. Egyptian surgeons documented it in 2400 BC. Hippocrates used it in 400 BC. Roman legions carried it across the known world. Every major medical tradition on Earth independently arrived at the same compound. Modern science confirmed every mechanism. Peer-reviewed journals published the results. The WHO acknowledged the evidence, and a $40 billion antibiotic industry continued operating as though none of it existed. The honey never changed. The chemistry never changed. The bacteria it kills are the same bacteria defeating the drugs that replaced it. What changed was who controlled the information that reached medical schools, hospitals, and the people sitting in waiting rooms. Your grocery store has been stocking the answer for $6 the entire time. They just made very sure nobody told you what the question was. If this vault opened something for you today, subscribe and share it with someone who deserves to know. Every share keeps open what they spent decades trying to seal. Your next vault opens soon. What is inside weighs even heavier.